Hello, HyddenWell farmers. Do you know what time it is? It's time for story time. I met Dr. Mike Culver way back in 1985. I had a dog by the name Petey, and he was one of my best hunting dogs. I'd taken him hunting out on the little hunting grounds I had down by the railroad tracks, and I had learned the skill from my grandfather and my father how to field dress a rabbit, which also included decapitating the rabbit. And so I cleaned the rabbit. Little did I know that little Petey had went around and eat the head of the rabbit whole. He didn't even chew it up. He was in a hurry. We were hunting and he had things to do. He didn't want to lose out on that rabbit's head. And so he got very ill, and one day I went in and told my dad, "Hey Dad, little Petey's not feeling good." And so he took him to the vet. We took him to the vet, and he kept feeling something in his belly, gave him an enema, and all of a sudden on Dr. Culver's exam table, Petey delivered the head of a rabbit. And it stunk. It was a bad deal. And so one day I come home from school, a counseling session, and my father asked me, he said, "What do you plan on doing with your life?" I was about 16, 17 years old, and I said, "Dad, I don't know. I was thinking about being a veterinarian." And he said, "Well, go down there to Mike Culver and ask him if he's got a job." I thought that was a good idea, so I did. I went down to Mike Culver's and introduced myself, and he said I could come and hang out with him anytime I wanted. And so I did. I would go down there and volunteer and just hang out. And for long, he lost his farmhand, and he needed somebody to come and feed his cattle and work his hay. And so that began the relationship that I had with Dr. Mike Culver. Now, growing up in an agricultural family, my grandfather, my grandpa, Bev Smith, he had a grain farm in northern Ohio, and I would, work there on the summers, if you call it work. I'd drive a tractor for him occasionally, but mostly I just saw what he grew. I didn't really actively participate in his farming activities. I would ask him a lot of questions about how it worked and what they did, but as far as knowing about farming, I didn't. And so even though I was ingrained and engrossed in Grandpa Smith's agricultural farming of crops, I knew even less about cattle. I didn't know nothing about cows. I'd seen them out in the field. I'd seen them out in, places, and I knew where hamburger come from, but I didn't have any experience working those cattle. Well, one day as I'm working, Mike says it's time to do our spring working, and we've got to castrate and vaccinate a whole bunch of calves, and it's weaning time. And I was excited about that, but I had no idea what was going on. And we separated the cows from the little babies, and the calves were somewhere between 300 and 500 pounds when we weaned them. And he had this old corral system. Now, not a modern corral system. He had an old wooden corral system. The kind that somebody just invents and seen it in a picture somewhere or another and decide they'd build them a cattle working facility. And at the end of that, he had a portable head chute that he would let down and attach to the board lane that would go up through there. And of course, he's the veterinarian, so he's doing all the veterinary stuff. He's deworming, he's delousing, he's vaccinating, he's keeping all the records up. He's cutting and making bulls into steers, and he's putting tags in and deciding who goes into what field, and he's doing all that kind of stuff. My job was to keep the calves coming and ready so that when he let one out, there was one behind ready to go. And I thought that would be an easy job. But it turned out to be a learning experience. because number one, those boogers are strong. Number two, they're not trained to go through a working facility. And number three, they're scared. So we had one left in the lane. We'd pushed a whole bunch through and kept them tight, and we was on about the last one. There wasn't a gate behind to lock them in. So if they got around, turned around, and got out of the gate, you had to run them all the way back around again. Well, this calf, probably about 600 pounds, she got herself turned around in that push lane. And when she did, I had the bright idea that I could get her turned back around and go back through that chute. Well, that old gal, she lowered her head. Of course, it wasn't a girl. It was I think it was a steer or a bull at the time. He lowered his head, and all of a sudden he come. And he got, I was a big boy too. I was about 200 pounds. And he got his head right between my legs. And when he did, he flipped. And the only thing that Dr. Culver saw from his working facility is me going straight up in there and then over the gate onto the other side. It was like an anti-gravity machine. That bull flipped me completely out of the working facility. And these walls were about 6 or 7 foot tall because they were taller than me. And that thing flipped me completely out of there. On the other side of the wall was nothing but pure mud and muck. And I landed in that. And I remember Dr. Mike Culver turning around and looking at me, and he put both hands on his knees, and he just started laughing. He thought that was the funny. I wasn't too thrilled about being thrown out of the working facility. Not only thrown out of the working facility, but I was covered in muck. But I'll tell you what, if I'd ever had a desire to go back and film something, that would have been it, because I guarantee you that was funny. Dusted all the mud and everything off, and I ran it back around, and it went through the chute, and we got it worked. And even to this day, I remember getting flipped by that bull like it was yesterday. Now, there's a lot of things I learned about cattle. And I went to college, and over all those years of working with Mike, I had a group of young men that was in my dorm room, and they started talking about tipping cattle. And my ears perked up because I thought, tipping cattle, what are they talking about? And they didn't know my background any more than I knew theirs. But the more they talked, the more I started scratching my head. Tipping cattle, what are you talking about? And they would talk about how that they would go out in a field where cows were standing, and they were standing up sleeping. And if you were real good, you could walk up and you could push one of them, and they would moo all the way down. Oh, I tell you what, I started having the bestest of fun with that, because I was thinking in my mind, now I know a lot about cattle, and I've worked a lot of cattle, and that's not how that works. Oh, but man, the more they talked, the more that they swore up and down they'd done it, they'd experienced, their friends had done it, they'd run out in this cow. So I called their bluff. I said, well, I'll tell you what, if that's true, then let's go out and find some cows and go cow tipping. So we got in a car and we drove out toward Paris, Kentucky, and found an old cow farm way out, and there was some cows standing up on a field. I can't even remember his name now. But I told him, I said, I got $50 in my pocket. It's the only money I got in my name, but if you can run up there and tip one of them cows over, I'll give it to you. Boy, I tell you what, he jumped over that fence, and I could already tell he was in over his head. He started climbing up that little ridge, and the moon was out. This big beller went out, and all of a sudden, these cows, they started running down that hill, and he got spooked and started coming back, and then all of a sudden I heard this snorting and this grunting, and about the time he got to the fence, This old bull had caught up with him. He was trying to climb over the fence, but that bull got his nose right under his back end and flipped him clean out of that field. We caught him about halfway over. He looked at me and I said, "There ain't no such thing as tipping cattle." I said, "I may be from the country and I may not know much about TV and video games and all sorts of stuff." I said, "But now, you ain't going out there." I said, "Even if they're asleep standing up," which cows pretty much sleep laying down. They can take a nap standing up, but they pretty much sleep laying down on their belly. But they've always got guard cows and stuff. And I mean, they're herd animals. They're smarter than we think them are. But anyway, I told him, I said, "There ain't no such thing as tipping cattle." And he says, "Well, you got me." Easiest $50 I ever made in my life. And now when I sit here, he still owes me that $50. Anyway, that's story time from HyddenWell Farms. I hope you have a very blessed day.